all but Nami's family. Great supportive community, close-knit caring family. We're non-judgy, blanket fuzzy, stigma-free. All but Nami's family, friends, family, and community. We all but Nami's family. Teacher sharing is our key. Great big thanks to you all.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stigma Stompers, Nami of Erie County, PA's one and only podcast. I am one of your hosts, Abby.
And I'm your other host, Janana.
Today we have with us Jeremy. I'm going to let him talk about himself. I'm going to skip an intro. I'm going to let you get right into it.
Yeah.
So, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Janana and Abby. I'm really honored to be here. When I was asked to come here and speak, my first reaction was I'm not going to have anything to say. But I think in thinking about what I was going to say, I found some things that really mattered to me. So I'm honored to be here. And a little bit about me. I have a diagnosis. I've been diagnosed with schizo-affective disorder for most of my adult life, back when I was 20, so 27 years or so. In that time, I've struggled with emotions. I've struggled with anger and fear. Some more, I don't know the word for it, the depression and anxiety, the psych emotions, I guess. I still struggle with most of the time, but I'm a work in progress, so some of these things I'll end up getting through one way or another. I just don't know how. Don't always know how I get through it, but I do get through it.
Yeah, sometimes things take time, so the important part is you're working towards, your goals, and we're sure that you'll achieve it. So thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate it. If you don't mind going a little bit deeper, how did you find out, that about your mental health disorders, and what were the next steps that you took?
I first found out about it when I was in college. I was acting very strangely. I was sending letters home that didn't make any sense. My parents knew right away something was wrong with me. The people that I was living with also knew something was wrong with me, but were kind of hesitant to do anything about it. I ended up failing out of my classes, which ended up being one of the best things that could have happened, because if I would have kept going down the road I was on, I could have, I could have had things much worse. So I had my first episode was when I was in college. It took a while for a diagnosis to be established, but eventually it became schizo-affective disorder, which is how I see myself now in terms of my diagnosis. I've had 3 major episodes in my life. The first one at college, the second one when I was just finishing grad school. I came home. It was actually the first time that I had ever self-harmed. And went to the hospital for the first time and stayed there for about 3 weeks. I did very well afterward. Well enough, I should say. And I had my third episode about 10 years ago in April, where I was actively self-harming, and I tried to take my life. Since then, I've been doing as well as I can expect to be doing. I have a lot of good people in my life, and I'm grateful for every day I get.
That's great.
Yeah,
We're very happy you're here.
Yes. And it's important. We've talked before in some of our episodes, the support system that you have, it definitely makes a difference. And having those people supporting you, and, no matter who it is, it could be a coworker, it could be a friend, a family member, anyone. Just kind of that encouragement. I know it means a lot. So like Abby said, we're happy you're here, and thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to still be here. I think this is an honor to me to be able to tell my story, and it helps me to tell it. The more often that I do so, the more I learn about my illness and about how I managed to get through it. So I'm happy to be here too, because it's helping me.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
For anyone that may not know what schizo-affective is, can you give like a little like summary description and maybe some like symptoms that you experienced or like other common symptoms?
Definitely. So schizophrenia is a psychotic disorder characterized usually by delusional thoughts and behaviors. Hearing voices and those things are commonly associated with schizophrenia. Schizo-affective disorder has a mood disorder component to it. Sometimes it's mania, sometimes it's depression, and sometimes it's both. So schizo-affective, I suffer from depression mostly. I don't have manic symptoms too much. Not to say that I don't get very emotional sometimes, but I, for the most part, struggle with depression. It's a combination of a mood disorder and a psychotic disorder.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know it might be tough to share, you know, that personal story. It's never easy to kind of, in a sense, I would say, relive it and explain what had happened. So we truly, again, do appreciate you coming on and talking about your experience, because I'm sure some people listening might be going through something similar, but maybe they're afraid to talk about it or don't know where to go or who to ask for help. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what the next steps were once you found out, and, you know, what steps you took to get to the point where you're at today?
Yeah. Did you feel like relieved that you had a diagnosis? Were you scared?
At the time, I was mostly just so symptomatic that I couldn't really think one way or another about it.
Yeah.
And my parents and, well, my brothers to some extent supported me, but my parents are the ones who got me a psychiatrist and a med regimen and a therapist. Those steps were huge, but they didn't happen all at once. I was home from school for the better part of 4 years before I was able to return. In that time, we looked for psychiatrists, we looked for medications, and we didn't have much luck with finding either one. Eventually, we found an amazing doctor who finally leveled with my mom, especially that, your son is not well. These are some things you might expect, and this is what we can do. And I wasn't aware enough at the time, but over the years, I would say definitely there's some gratitude for having a diagnosis and knowing that what I have is not foreign to other people, that what I have is something that other people share as well.
Yeah, I definitely think to anyone listening, when you're going through it, it's definitely scary no matter what it is, because in that moment you feel like I'm alone. Nobody understands. When we take a step back, there's a lot of individuals suffering with mental health challenges. So I think that's important to recognize, I'm not alone, and there's others that go through it, but in the moment it's definitely tough. For your mom, as a mother, or your dad, or any of your family members, how did they take it? I know sometimes individuals are scared to talk to their family members or friends about it. How did your family react? I know you said they were the ones who kind of took those next steps to get you the proper help. If you don't mind sharing that.
Not at all. My dad, I would say, was pretty devastated. He had high hopes for me. I went to some of the best schools. I was on my way to becoming very successful, I guess is a word. But the mental health, the first episode that I had was such a setback that I think my dad was really devastated and heartbroken by it. My mom was probably my strongest supporter, probably continues to be my strongest supporter. I can't say enough about how crucial it was that both of them were around. And to this day, I count my lucky stars that I got well while they were still alive, that I'm able to thank them and show them that I've recovered and they don't have to worry as much as they did.
I love that.
At the time, they were very worried about me.
Yeah, that's understandable, especially if you're not familiar with what's going on. You know, it can be terrifying. I know there's one, I think people don't truly understand how schizophrenia works. I know there's one exercise, I think in mental health first aid that they do, where I think Heather might have shared it with me, where she's trying to explain, for example, directions on how to get somewhere, but then the rest of the room is talking all at once, and you know, the individual she's trying to explain it to is standing on the other side of the room. To truly understand, you know, what goes on and how it's hard to go through something like that, because you're having so many different voices going on at the same time and you're trying to focus on one thing. I don't think until you do that exercise you can truly, even then, I don't think you can truly understand what someone goes through when they have an episode.
I agree, yeah. I think being around other people with mental illness is one of the best gifts that I could have been given. So yeah.
Thank you. So you're part of the ACT team, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
If you don't mind, could you share a little bit about what that entails, how you got to that point, and what the ACT team exactly is?
So ACT is Assertive Community Treatment. We're a mobile hospital. We have a psychiatrist, we have nurses, we have therapists. I function as a CPS, Certified Peer Specialist. We keep people out of the hospital. Our referrals are usually from the hospital. It's people who haven't responded well to the hospital system that we work with. We set up services for them. We assist with basic needs, medication, especially medication, getting established in the community, and just the word nice doesn't really describe them well enough. Everyone on the team is just the nicest people, and our clients reflect it. Our clients are just a good group of people. I think of them as my second family. So ACT has been the best thing that I can remember having done.
How did you get involved with ACT?
It's strange, actually. I was supposed to be a mathematician. I was a mathematician, and with my diagnosis and everything, I kind of just carried along my diagnosis with me, and I never really thought I would use it for anything. I thought it was just something I would have to deal with. Excuse me. I thought it was something I'd just have to deal with and make the best of it. And one of my friends, I think, encouraged me, said, there's a thing called a CPS. I think a lot of people would benefit if you were to share your lived experience with them and be what kind of a model you can be for recovery. So I said sure, and I went to the class. The class was 2 weeks, and at the end of it, I had a couple interviews. The first interview I had was the one I went with, and luckily too, because it ended up being one of the best things I've ever done.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for helping our community.
Mhm.
We appreciate everything you do.
I feel like a very, very common theme in anything mental health is that the peer-led, like, lived experience aspect of, like, a peer support group or a CPS or anything. I feel like having the lived experience to help those living through it or experiencing it is so important. Because I feel like a lot of the times some people in groups will say that, like, my psychologist doesn't actually understand what I'm going through, or my doctor doesn't get it. But the people in the group that they're in, they do get it. So I feel like they're more understood and feel better understood, and feel like they can share more and maybe even make more progress to recovery because of the lived experience part. So it's important. So you're doing an important
It's
job.
very important. Knowing that there's other people out there with the same experience has been instrumental in recovery.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the next thing I wanted us to talk about is a little bit about managing emotions. That must have been a very stressful time, and not knowing what's going on maybe in the beginning. What are some things that you could share, how you were able to manage your emotions, what helped you, or even currently some things that maybe you do that help manage emotions?
Right. Memorizing things has helped. I remember when I was first diagnosed, I had a really hard time describing what I was feeling and thinking, and I would literally memorize poetry, and that was the way I communicated. I would talk to my parents. I would just go up to my dad and recite Shakespeare to him, and that was our conversation. It's hard to underscore how important it was to have words back then, because I didn't have any words for myself. So I took other people's words and I used them until I developed my own. And over the years, I think that continues to be one of the best ways I have of dealing with emotions is a sort of meditation on a specific word or a set of words, things that with repetition kind of produce a soothing effect on me. The process of memorizing is relaxing. It might not sound relaxing to you, but it takes just enough focus and not too much focus that it's uncomfortable. So it takes me out of my head, and at the same time, it gets me in tune with what I'm thinking and feeling.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
I know. I never would have thought of
Me
that,
either.
but that's amazing. I guess everyone, maybe we can try that sometimes. I don't know.
I guess, like, that does make sense. In some meditation, I mean, they focus on, like, a word or a couple words.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense.
Mhm.
I guess I never thought of it as, like, a soothing tool. So that's very
Right,
interesting.
Right.
And I guess with the memorization, it's not something that you, like, have to do, so there's no pressure.
Right.
It's just you enjoy it. So I guess, yeah, that's really interesting.
Wow.
I know it's not conventional, but it helped me a great deal. And I still, on mornings where I'm feeling symptomatic, especially anxious or worried or fearful or angry, before I can go into work, sometimes I'll say a prayer. Sometimes I'll go over things that I've memorized before, ways to manage emotions. I have a few go-to kind of meditations that I talk about. One of them is mindfulness. When I'm alone, I say, be mindful of my thoughts. When I'm with people I care about, be mindful of my tongue. When I'm around people who I get angry with, be mindful of my temper. And just saying those things kind of brings to mind the calm state that I'm looking for. So it's more than just changing the way I experience my emotions. It's also instructional. Like there's real practical evidence that if I say something often enough, that it becomes ingrained in the way I think and feel.
Yeah. It's like similar to manifesting.
Yeah, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Another interview we did, I love the saying, how he said it, it's the energy you put out. You know, if you're...
Yeah, what you put out, you get back.
Yeah. So I love that.
So if you're putting out, like, a tame temper or, like, minding what you say, you can get that back.
Yeah.
Right.
And is that the same advice you give for individuals you work with, you know, on the ACT team, your clients, you know, is that the same advice you give them for managing emotions? Or do you think there's other advice that they, you know, that works better for them, if you don't mind sharing that experience a little more?
Not at all. We do written exercises is usually how I try to communicate my wellness tools. It's a set of questions that I learned when I was in grad school, and for some reason stuck with me over the years. The woman's name who started it is Byron Katie, and Byron Katie did something that she called the work, and the work is a way of investigating thoughts and feelings to see if they're valid, and the questions are meant to reveal whether it's a valid belief or not. The first question is, what's the evidence? So actually the first thing is to write down a belief that's causing trouble. For example, I'm not a good person is a belief that I'll have. And I go through these questions to try to investigate, is that a valid belief or is there a more realistic one? The first question is it what's the evidence? And when I write this down, and when I have my clients, I call them my peers, write these things down, it's just the facts. So what facts are there that support the belief that I'm not a good person? Well, if I'm just describing how things are going, I'll say, well, I went to morning meeting, I got angry. I had a meeting with one of my peers, and I feel like I messed it up. And I try not to interpret the facts, just saying what happened. The next question I do is that always true? And this one is one of Byron Katie's questions too. Are there people, places, and things where that belief is not true? And yeah, so I mean, when I'm around my family, I'm a good person. When I go to church, when I'm working, when I'm taking care of myself. So it's not universally true that I'm not a good person. The other questions kind of follow the same suit. And by the end of the exercise, the idea is that I've come up with a totally new belief that's more realistic than the other one. So in this case, sometimes I'm not a good man. Sometimes I mess things up, but that doesn't mean that's who I am. It's a way of thinking and especially a way of feeling. I think our perception gets kind of intertwined with what emotions we're having, and it becomes difficult to separate what's real from what I'm feeling inside.
Absolutely love that you bring that up, because I feel like for everyone that's something that they can utilize, because there's times where everyone starts to overthink, you know, maybe did I mess this up, or could I have done this differently, or maybe I'm not so great at this or that. So I love that you bring that up, and you know, that mechanism that you use. And do you mind repeating what the individual's name was that created this?
Byron Katie.
Okay. Yeah, because that seems like something that we
helpful
could all utilize. Yeah.
Do you ever kind of take the results from those questions and use it towards like setting goals or anything like that?
Honestly, I usually don't. Well,
with you or like
I don't always keep them when I write these things down. Sometimes it's just the exercise that does it. I do encourage my peers to keep what they write. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Because it's important to go back and look at it. And truthfully, I do keep a belief journal that is about 60 pages now, just filled with these questions. They don't always have direct application, but I keep them because I know one day I'm going to want to look back and see, is this something that helped or is this something that did not help? And having it written down, it's harder to lose track of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you're familiar with NAMI, right? Have you ever utilized any of our services before? I think that's how you possibly got introduced to maybe Sharon, if I'm not mistaken.
I did not use the services directly. I mean, it was my mom who took the helm. My mom's always been my strongest supporter. Through every episode that I've had, she's been there, bad times and good. And she actually thought it was important enough that she became president of NAMI. And she did family to family. I think that's where she met Sharon.
Yeah.
Aww.
And probably a year ago, Sharon got in contact with me and asked me if I wanted to talk at one of the family to family meetings. And my thought was, like, why? You know? But it's just having the support that I've had has just been so instrumental. So I'm eternally grateful, and I do have a lot of good stories to share. But for the most part, I think at this point in my recovery, my main way of returning all the kindness that my mom and dad have shown me is to be well. And like I said before, I'm grateful that I got through it in enough time that they could experience a healthy version of me. So yeah, it's been a trip.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you're able to use your experience to help not only peers dealing with similar situations, but also family members. Because family to family, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a course for loved ones of those struggling with their mental health to kind of learn how to best support them. So the fact that you're able to go in and talk to them about why your support was helpful and why it's important, that's also really great.
Yeah.
I feel like just talking to anyone that will listen about the support you had, what helped you, the importance of having a support system is so important for everyone to hear, especially those who have a family member or those who have never even had like a firsthand experience with it, just so that they have the knowledge of it.
Right.
So that's very cool that you're able to do that.
Definitely. Hard to underscore how important it is to have support. And there's a lot of good people out there. I'm thinking as you're talking about my first BCM, who he worked through. It was called community integration back then. I think it's Safe Harbor now.
I think so.
Okay, I can't
not
remember,
sure.
but I do remember the way he made me feel, and he made me feel like a person. When my mom and I talk about how I recovered over the years, a lot of it starts with this person. The first psychiatrist who helped and the first BCM who helped, and without them, I might have lingered. I might have just wasted away. But for some reason, there were people there who were willing to get in the way, and for those people, I can't really express enough gratitude.
Yeah. I do want to ask, sometimes people get discouraged, like they might try therapy or a psychiatrist and not have the best outcome, and then they get very discouraged and they don't want to try again. Have you had a similar experience? I know you just mentioned a few individuals who helped, but before that, did you have any experiences where maybe you tried a few and not necessarily that maybe they were bad
Like you didn't click,
individuals.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe it just wasn't working for you.
Definitely. I've had probably 10 therapists over the years. I remember being at school, going from one therapist to another one. It never worked. And even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, I was still going through therapists without sticking with one very long. The therapist I have now, it's only been 6 months, but I think I've finally found one. So it's definitely a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
I think it has to be someone who shows you the best parts of yourself, and someone who's inspiring to you. And a lot of the therapists that I've had, nothing against them, but they have a job to do. It's not the same thing as caring about someone. The therapist I have now genuinely cares, and I think I'm finally at a point where I'm willing to put the work in. So yeah, it's definitely happened over the years. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I know I've heard a lot, I tried therapy, but it didn't work for me. And it's like, okay, sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it's all about finding that right therapist for you. It's like when you're looking for a relationship, a life partner, you don't necessarily find the first person right away. Sometimes it happens, but not all the time. So it's just, you have to have those trials and see who you actually connect with and work with. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. I think it's a blessing to find someone you can work with.
Yeah. How can someone develop greater self-awareness and emotional intelligence, if you don't mind sharing?
I would say doing the work, doing the examination of feelings and beliefs. I sound like a broken record when I'm talking to my peers, because I'm always encouraging them to write stuff down. And I can't I can't say enough about writing stuff down, because it gets it out of my head. It gets it to where I can see it. It gets it to where I can remove it from my emotions. And if it's a negative belief that I'm having, or a negative thought, or just an invalid thought that I'm having, I think we build emotional endurance by doing these kind of steps. And the more that we do them, the more ingrained it gets, and at one point it just becomes a routine. If I'm at work and I'm not feeling well, I'm anxious or paranoid, I'll stop, and I'll literally stop and write things down. And if I'm not good to myself, I'm not going to be good to anyone else. So I think of it as an investment. 10 minutes of introspection, or 3 or 4 hours of feeling lousy. But I think as long as a person is willing to ask those questions, it's a way to emotional management.
I definitely agree. I know for myself, I've done that before too, where you have all these emotions going on. Maybe you're having a tough day. I feel like writing it out is as if you were telling someone, you're getting it off your chest, what's going on. And it's like those words, don't worry about grammar or anything. It's just kind of getting it
like
off your chest. Yeah, literally, exactly. So I love that.
Since you're a CPS, you might have some insight. How can we be better listeners and supporters of other people experiencing like super intense emotions?
I think with listening, the first thing is not to have an agenda. I think where I mess up most of the time is I'm waiting to say something. And if I have an agenda, like I'm not gonna fully understand what the person's going through. I have to let go and release, any of my expectations and just listen for understanding. Would be my strongest advice, I guess. Listening, there's a few things, practical things that you can do to increase your ability to listen. Eye contact is important. Withholding judgment is huge, because we get so excited sometimes to share things that we kind of interrupt one another and lose track of what's going on. So withholding judgment, checking our emotions. If I notice that what the person's saying is causing me to feel angry or sad, I try to remind myself, okay, it's not about you. You know, this person's trusting you enough that they want to talk to you. Just give them your attention. And that's one thing that I always have to give to my peers, is my time and attention. Even though I don't necessarily have answers for them, but I think sometimes people aren't interested in answers. I think sometimes it's just about being heard.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Absolutely. I know we've had that discussion in the office. Sometimes it's not about fixing the problem. It's more of just listening to that individual.
Some people, I know sometimes I'm not looking for a solution. I just want to talk about it, and then I can move on from it. I don't even need a solution. I just need to yap for a little bit to get it off my chest, and then I'm good to
happens,
go.
Yeah.
So listening is important.
So, you know, especially with you being a CPS and working with individuals, I know sometimes, you know, boundaries are tough to set. What are some ways that someone can set boundaries while still being compassionate towards others?
Use I statements. And I think another thing is, before you go into a situation that you know might cause you stress, and it might be difficult to listen to a particular person talk, to ahead of time try to weigh, how much of myself can I give this situation? What can I offer, and where do I have to stop and say, there's, you know, I want to understand you better, but right now I'm feeling very emotional. Is it okay if we talk about something similar but different? But knowing ahead of time, if it's going to be a difficult conversation to have, just being mindful of, you know, that oxygen mask. You have to help yourself before you can help other people. And I tell my peers, you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's really about knowing where your limits are. With the right person, the boundary will be respected. Sometimes it won't. But you can't beat yourself up if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Love that.
If someone is very, like, if they push back towards that boundary and don't fully respect it, do you have any advice on how to move on from there and kind of steer the conversation in a different direction to still be able to uphold your boundaries, but you're seeing that other side isn't really receptive of it?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. When I'm at work, I'll open up a conversation and then realize I'm uncomfortable, and it's kind of hard to step back and reassert a boundary. When you're talking about how to maintain compassion, I think about what's more important. Is it more important for me right now, or is it more important for them? And one of the things I say when I'm not sure what else to say is, do you want me to talk or do you want me to listen? It kind of sets the tone. It kind of says, I want to help you. How can I help you? And from a place where both of us are going to feel comfortable. I think a lot of people with mental illness have natural empathy that people without not that people without mental illness don't have it, but people with mental illness tend to have more of it, I think. And those boundaries are key to healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And I think with the right person, setting a boundary is a healthy thing. And the right person will only see where the good intention is, and won't confuse a boundary with "you don't care about me" or "you're not helping me" or "you can't help me," because it's reciprocal, and the person who is receiving the boundary will have to set a boundary themselves. And we have to respect boundaries if we hope to get anywhere with anyone.
Yeah. When emotions get involved, I know a lot of times individuals are afraid to set a boundary because they're afraid of, is this other side going to get hurt? Are they going to take it the wrong way? These different emotions, and then your own emotions on, if this person reacts negatively towards my boundary, how am I going to feel? Have you run into that, or do you have any advice on managing those emotions when it comes to setting boundaries?
I have had that experience where both of us feel kind of shortchanged, that the help that could have been offered wasn't, or that it was offered in the wrong way. So when I think about what the best course is, I guess my advice is to do unto others, and to expect that others are going to have that same mentality. If I'm setting a boundary with someone who respects boundaries, it's because they have boundaries of their own to set. And I try to remember that if it's good for me and I'm a general human being, it's probably going to be good for the people who I'm trying to help as well. So
I love that. Thank you.
What are some, kind of shifting gears, what are some signs that someone may need professional help or intervention to manage their emotions?
I can speak from my own experience. I was very angry. I was an angry person. I was self-harming. All the signs were there. I wasn't willing to get help, and the people who were trying to help me, I wasn't having any of their advice. So I think paying attention to how well a person cares for themselves, and not just when they're with other people, but how well they tend to care for themselves when they're alone. Is this a person who feels uncomfortable, even for me, over the years, it's been hard for me to relax. Excuse me. It's been hard for me to justify my right to do nothing and to just be and exist and be happy. I think that was a warning sign from my parents and for all the people who cared about me, that I couldn't do that. I couldn't just be myself and be content and know that I was enough and that I was worthy. I always had to prove something, and the way it appeared to other people was a man who's unhinged. But what was going on inside was I was so angry for not being perfect that I showed that, regardless of how hard I tried not to. I showed that I was unstable, and it all came from this perception of how I was, not in relation to other people, but just how I was as a human being.
What is a message that you have to the individuals listening to this podcast today, on some way that how we can support individuals who maybe are going through a mental health challenge or, just managing emotions in general, what's a message that you have on, or not a message, I guess advice on how people can support their loved ones?
I can think of a couple things. For something in general to keep in mind, I would say it's what you make of it. Our emotions often happen regardless of whether we want them to or not. We can try to stuff them, or we can try to understand them. A lot of times our emotions are directing us to the right thing, or misdirecting us from the wrong thing. If we can acknowledge how we're feeling and try to understand how we're feeling without judging it, or without having anything other than what it is, just letting it go. And I would also say that you're not alone would be my message. There's other people who have been through the same kind of thing, and you're not alone. There's a whole world out there who would benefit knowing that you're still here, and who would benefit from knowing that someone could get through what they're going through and still be a decent human.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Everything so far, that you've told us about your personal journey and how far you've come, I think I can speak for both Abby and I. We're truly proud of you and how far you've come, and we're rooting for you. So thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
I don't know.
You have anything else you would like to leave people with?
Be mindful. When you're alone, especially, be mindful of how you talk to yourself. A lot of times we're harder on ourselves than we are on other people.
Yep.
And it goes by so quickly that you might be saying things that you would never say to someone you cared about without even noticing it. So be mindful.
I do love that. I know we talked about...
We talk about that a lot.
Yeah. There's this exercise on this app that we all in the office have. I've been slacking on it, I admit. But, that one of the exercises on that app is you put down a situation on when you talked negatively about yourself, and you put what that situation had to do with. Then it asks you what, you told yourself, how you were feeling. You kind of, like you said, just spit out words and how you felt about it. And then it asks you who's someone that you care about, and you put that. And then the next prompt that they leave you with is, if that person came to you with the same situation, what would you tell them? How would you react?
And it's vastly different.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
finally it asks
It's
you,
vastly
how was it
different.
different with the way you spoke to yourself compared to your loved one?
And you don't really realize where they're going with it until the end, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah.
So I am very cruel to myself.
Yeah. So I'm glad you bring that up, because sometimes
that's very important.
We're our toughest critics. I know today Abby brought it up to me when it had to do with our website, trying to figure out photos. Abby was like, you're never going to be happy with whatever photo we choose, because we're our own toughest critics. We really are. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Be mindful is a good one.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well,
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for having me.
Of
It's
course.
an honor, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing here. So
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you for joining us. For real.
Exactly. Taking the time to share your story, like I said, might be tough, to share your personal experience, but we do appreciate it, because someone listening, it can make all that of a difference hearing your story and
100%.
where you are today. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who listened. You can find more information about our programming and everything at namieri.org. And Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stigma Stompers Podcast. We truly appreciate all your support.
If you want to see more about what we do in our community, make sure you check out our website. It's namieri.org. Make sure you also click on our t-shirt store tab so you can buy a t-shirt. We get a portion of all the proceeds. And make sure you sign up for our newsletter. It has all of our programming and event updates.
Another way you can get involved is if you feel comfortable sharing your personal story. You can email us at info@namierie.org, or you can give us a call at 814-456-1773.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.